Hello everyone and welcome to episode 11 of the ITSM Crowd. My name's Claire Agutter and I'm the lead tutor for ITSM Zone. We've got a fantastic panel of people with us tonight to talk about our topic, organisational change management. So we're going to start with the introductions and we will work from left to right on my screen. So Andy, please, if you can introduce yourself first.
Hi everyone. So I am Andrea, or Andy Kiss, how I go with my Twitter handle, and I got involved with ITSM Crowd due to I felt it was something I wanted to give back to the community. I might have some skills and knowledge which I can share, and plus because I respect Claire a lot, and I'm really honored to be part of this. So that's me.
Thank you. And Dave?
I'm David Backham. I'm an ITSM consultant and I run a company called Soliloquy.
Thank you very much. Karen?
Hi, Karen Faris, IT Service Management Consultant, Director of Macanta Consulting, based out of Melbourne, Australia, and also an organisational change management practitioner.
And an organisational change management author as well?
Correct.
But I'm sure we'll be coming back to that later on too. Randy?
Randy Steinberg, and I'm a consultant with a company called Concurrency, and basically do nothing but IT service management engagements with different companies around the world. Been doing this for quite some time and try to fill in where I think people need the most help, and have a special interest in organizational change, as that's one of the key areas I find that IT struggles with quite a bit.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Simone?
Been in the industry a long time. Fabulous to be part of the mentor group here. It's such, as Andy said, it's really great to be able to, share knowledge and experiences with other people and help them along the rocky road, especially since we're talking about people and organisational change. I have a strong HR background as well, and a lot of that is in organisational development and change management, and not necessarily what we call ITIL change management. I mean the people change management side. Anything else, just look up my LinkedIn profile.
Fantastic, thank you, Simone. And last but no means least, Suresh.
Hi everyone, my name is Suresh GP. I'm the Managing Director of Top Solutions and also Board of Director for ITSM of India. Interesting though, I've been now in Manila at 3 o'clock in the morning, but to do an organizational change transformation for 3 countries in Geneva, Panama, and Manila. So quite interesting to share my perspectives as well.
Oh, thank you for staying up so late, Suresh, as well. I didn't realise what time it was for you. For those of you that are watching us live on YouTube, we will keep an eye on Twitter as well. So if you've got any questions that you want to ask, if you use the hashtag ITSM Crowd, then we'll pick up those questions too and we'll put them to the panel. But the first thing that I'd like to do as we're talking about organisational change management is just define exactly what we mean by that term, because Simone said we're not talking about your traditional ITIL change management. So Karen, if you can kick us off please with the definition of organisational change management.
Yeah, certainly. So for me, organisational change management is really about winning the hearts and minds of those people that are going to be impacted by any change you're making within the organisation, whether that's a change to process, to tools, to organisational structure, to roles. Not everyone is going to get on board with your change, however good you think it is. Everyone has different values, different viewpoints. So it's about identifying where those people are on their change, their individual change journey, and trying to bring them along with you. So it's about identifying pockets of resistance and looking at tools and techniques to overcome that, and then key is then reinforcing the change after it's been implemented.
Thank you. Has anybody else got anything that they want to add in terms of defining what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I always have a joke that I always start out with companies embarking on service management, and that it's a piece of cake to implement. You just have to get the people out of the way. And To what Karen said is exactly right. I mean, people, in your head, you come with a set of values and a set of skills in terms of how you operate in the workplace today. And as you implement service management solutions, those introduce changes to the way that you're actually working. And that requires changes in some of those values, and it might require some changes in some of those skills. So the organizational change effort is really about how do I bridge that gap and get people to adopt and accept and change their behaviors in the way they actually operate and work.
I think for some people too that they misunderstand what we mean by change management. So yes, there's the practical logistics side of saying, okay, let's do a training gap analysis. What do we need? What we don't need? And what processes have to change, etc. So the logistics side, I think, in the main, most people kind of get that. The thing that they often miss and what tends to put them in the hole is the Psych 101, I guess, that the leadership in the people side. And they don't have to be in a leadership role or decision-making role to affect having leadership behaviours demonstrated and helping other people along the path. And I think that's something else that some people may be just starting to realise, is that no matter where they are in that chain, that they can help affect the cultural side of the change.
So is there a typical process that we would expect to follow for organisational change management? So with an IT change, we understand a very clear process. You describe it, you approve it, you test it, you build it. Is there one common process that we can adopt for organisational change management?
There's quite a few good methodologies out there. ProSci is one. I'm a ProSci accredited. There's, I'm trying to think of the names now. There's a Change Management Institute, CMI. There's AIM, Accelerated Implementation Management. So there's lots of frameworks that people can reach out to. They're all very similar in structure. So the key things are identifying all your stakeholders. That's everyone who's got an interest or is impacted by your change. Work out, are they for the change, against it, are they neutral? And then put in place tactics to address that. Identifying all of your sponsors, and sponsors should cascade down through the organisation. Determine their capability. They might need some coaching and mentoring to help transition their people through a change. And then the key elements are your communication plan, your training plan, your resistance management plan, which all forms part of your change management strategy. And then, most importantly, and I think the one a lot of people forget, is your reinforcement plan. Because people can get on board a change but very quickly revert to old ways of working, into their comfort zone. So we need to make sure we have some reinforcement tactics in place to put the message out there why we're changing and creating that sense of urgency. So, Kotter's structure is important as well.
I just want to add that, Randy, that one of the things I noticed that it's interesting we talk about whether there is a process to follow, and Karen said that there are methodologies, there are practices, that lots of people are afraid to get involved in organizational change management because they feel that I'm not trained on it, I'm not a specialist, I don't know the process to follow. But if we think about it, because lots of it is common sense, lots of it is about dealing with people, dealing with emotions. It's something you would do in your personal life as much as in your professional life. And while it is very good to get educated on the best practices and to know how to do it properly, I think we shouldn't be afraid to do it and start it. And especially working as a consultant, when you get involved in, I'm specializing in service integration and management in science, which is where organizational change management is crucial, because it's a massive change to an organization when you start talking about, integration and retain, non-retain situations.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, Andy, that you say it's common sense, and to a certain extent I think it is, but then so many organisations get it really, really wrong. I mean, Dave, I'll bring you in on this question. Why do you think companies do get organisational organisational change wrong? What are the common mistakes that we make?
I think one of my experiences is that we don't know when we start necessarily what the end position of the organisation is going to look like, and as you start to do your stakeholder analysis and start to find out the concerns that particularly strong stakeholders have, you may have to change your sort of preconceptions about what the solution might look like in order to address their particular concerns. So it's quite possible that you might want to start a program. Let's say you're going to implement service management and you think, I'm going to need to reorganize the IT department and put particular teams and structures in place to help us do the service management processes. But then when you start to speak to perhaps the service desk manager, you find that they actually have a very strong cultural view as to how they're going to provide their service to their customers, and you find that actually that's something that you really don't want to mess with. So you can start a project with one idea, but actually as you go through, you find through engaging with the stakeholders that actually there's a much better solution available, because you can then build around the organization's strengths and its own culture, rather than necessarily trying to bring in something from outside.
I'm going to find that sometimes they do the change is done and it happened, and only after that people start to think about, now let's do the change management, now manage the change. We've already done the change, but let's manage.
So I'll just I'll just add, there is a huge lack of organizational culture and the context specifically. Right now I'm actually doing an assessment, meeting and talking with people. It's way different to understand the whole culture, particularly sitting in different 3 locations. And we take things for granted that this is how things used to work, but you should understand the background people come across and the way the organization works. For example, in this organization, there is nobody who gets terminated. So there is no performance goals, so everybody gets the same kind of increment and stuff like that. So people have different ways of working. So if you just bring your own baggage in terms of this is how an organization can work, you are taken for a complete surprise. So I think there is a lot of elements of organization culture and context sensitivity, which is very, very vital to be taken into perspective when you drive these behavioral changes. And I'm a staunch believer of making this attitude, behavior, and cultural change to be effective for organizational change management.
Yeah, if I could propose. Go ahead.
Thanks. I think what the guys have just said is the whole reason that organizations struggle with organizational change, because it's about people, and people are complex. They have different values and beliefs, and we need to get inside their heads and understand what their position is. And it's hard, and I think we shy away from it, or organizations shy away from it, because it is complex.
Yeah, if I could propose a couple things, and this is with the IT person in mind. The big challenge is IT people historically, and by their nature, like to sit in a room and code and build stuff, and really don't like talking to other people most of the time. And that's one of the challenges to get over that. But if you're embarking on one of these efforts, I usually propose 5 steps that you can do starting Monday, and this should run in parallel with your implementation project. Number 1, and a lot of people were alluding to this, identify who your stakeholders are. You know, who needs to change, who needs to understand that, and how many of those stakeholders do you need to get to? Is it just a couple, or is it hundreds, or even thousands? The next thing is step 2 is for each stakeholder identify what they need to know, and basically create a list by stakeholder, all the things they need to know, not just how to use the tool, but other soft things like why is this important to the organization, what are their responsibilities, those kinds of things. Once you have that list, step 3, group that into communication campaigns. So take that list, and examples of a campaign, these are just broad categories with some objectives of things you want to get. For example, you might have an awareness campaign whose goal is just to let people know what's going on, and then you get deeper into that and how to use the tool and the process, and then maybe you reverse that, and now they're doing exercises to prove they know and understand it, and then the last campaign you're maybe supporting. But identify what those might be, and then create events around each of those to communicate that learning. Is it going to be a training class? Is it going to be a newsletter? Is it going to be some lunch and learn event, for example? And then schedule those events out. So Those basically, again, those 5 steps are know your stakeholders. Step 2, know what they want to know. Step 3, group all those things they need to know into campaigns. Step 4, create events that you could, and then step 5 is schedule those events, and then you can start to execute on all this as part of your communication effort. So that's a very quick synopsis, I know, but that's something that I find when I work with IT people, they kind of relate to that, and they're able to at least start to embark on this, and it doesn't become quite a mystery as to what they need to do.
Well, you are talking about a transformation. Oh, sorry, Andy.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so you are talking about a transformation. I'm with Karen. You know, the ProSci and the ADCAR model is something I've followed for many years now, and I find that just having that awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement as guidelines, that one of the things you just really hit on, Randy, that was so crucial, and what I find fails most often is that they might do stakeholder analysis, etc., but where they fall down is not understanding how to build their communication plan. And more often than not, I find the people that are upset, or they might have been excited about this new thing or excited about something that's going to get better and lose interest, is because communication just kind of dies off, or it's the wrong channel, wrong method, or the messages themselves are actually inconsistent. And especially when you get, you know, when you look at the change curve and look at the panic in some people, and I mean dire panic in some, and just a yeah, whatever with others attitude, is, you know, the way that communication, especially in mergers and acquisitions, as I call them, you know, even if we're going in to do a positive change and all of a sudden the word restructure gets mentioned, it's not even necessarily a merger with another organisation, just the fact, oh, what's going to change, where is it going to change, who's it's going to change, and you're saying, hang on, you're about to change my world. What does that really mean for me?
And
so communication is prime.
I also wanted to add to this what Randy said, that whoever is responsible for the change, for the coordination, that person has to leave all their perceptions, preconceived perceptions and stereotypes behind. Because, you know, it comes back directly to, you know, it's a slight comment that IT people are generally known to be sitting in a basement and coding. That's only a certain group of maybe doing some part of job type of IT people, and not all of them. So I always been in IT, and I never sat in a basement in my life, and I never coded either. I'm not even technical, and we have to kind of move away from this perception and not to place people into buckets to say, oh, you're HR, so you don't know nothing about technology, or you're this, or you're that. Because once we start adding the stereotypes, once we have our perceptions and preconceived ideas of how to treat somebody, that's when things are going to go downhill.
So here's a question then. Who's responsible for change management at the organisational level? Or should I say, who's accountable if we think of it from a racy perspective?
I look at this as part of the, you may have that ongoing, and you may have an office that specializes in that, but at the minimum, I see this as this is part of your project effort. It's another track of the project that executes in parallel, and it starts from the time the project starts till the time the project ends. The biggest mistake, it all comes down to, that I see, is that people misunderestimate the effort it takes to do this. And I talk to a lot of project managers that have run service management change initiatives, service management efforts, and almost all the time they'll say 80% of their project labor is going to organizational change kinds of activities. It's the meetings, that's on status, it's communicating things to people, it's dealing with organizations that are resisting or don't quite get it, but almost to a T they'll say 80% of our efforts are spent on this, not implementing the tool, not designing the processes. It's just this piece of it. So the biggest mistake is really just underestimating what it really takes to make this stuff work.
Yeah, I'd say depending on the size of the change that you're undertaking, and on that note, you know, it doesn't matter how small your change is. Organisational change management is still important if you want people to adopt the change. But if it's a reasonable size change, I'd say have a dedicated resource that does organisational change management, because it's the bit that gets overlooked. As Randy says, it's a big effort. You know, and if you're expecting a project manager to do that as well as manage the project, I would say have a dedicated, experienced resource to drive your organisational change management effort.
So how do we know when we have succeeded? I think it's normally fairly obvious when we've failed with an organisational change project, because people go back to whatever was there before. But what sort of things should we be looking for that allow us to say, yes, we've succeeded?
One of the things to do is, in those 5 steps, I said organize into campaigns. So each campaign has a set of objectives that you can measure. So as an example, in my awareness campaign, I might have an objective out there that says 90% plus of all stakeholders could communicate the goals and objectives of this particular project and what it's trying to do for the business. So you can set metrics for those and measure out at the end of each campaign, have you actually reached those objectives or not?
And you can use formal approaches and informal approaches. So you can do the formal things like performance statistics, those metrics that Randy's referring to. So, you know, are people actually using a new tool? Are people actually following a new process? But you can also have those informal observations, you know, the water cooler conversations. Do people get it? Are they on board? Are they using the new process or the new tool, and do they like it? Do they understand why they're doing it? So have a combination of formal and informal measurements.
So I look at it as one perspective that change management, organization change management, the first question that I ask is, what is in for me when you make this change? So I go back again after the exercise and ask, did it change the way we anticipated, right? So the best way is to ask the people who have actually gone through this change, has it changed the way that you anticipated? Do you see that kind of relevance to that? So people are able to vouch for it, that what you said is what we received, and that's an instant feedback or a review of whether your change has been successful, because you've embraced completely the change.
I think people forget about surveys. I mean, surveys are very powerful too. I'm very big, Randy, on doing communication campaigns and measuring those. And I think there's a lot of good material and understanding out there that people can look up on how to do that. I think in terms of, you know, surveying people prior to the change, you know, how they think things are, and you keep the questions, you know, the top 3 or top 5 things that are good, top 3, top 5 things that are bad, that kind of thing. Do your upfront thing about what this is, what they think the change may or may not do for their role, how their role then impacts the overall organisation objective. You know, how's it for them individually, how's it impact them within their team and what they do, and how do they then see that impacting the organisation. Then, you know, if you've got, depending on the size of the changes that are being made, and of course on what the changes are being made, sometimes it's just a process change. It's not necessarily, even though you're changing the way someone works and you still must have the cultural aspects incorporated there, it's not necessarily a large restructure, which is a different kind of approaches. As Karen said, there are multiple approaches. That's why I love your book, Kaz. It's 59 approaches, brilliant. It's great, informal, formal, innovative, conservative. Love the whole viewpoints of that. Do the survey at the same survey halfway through, or a quarter of the way and 3/4 of the way through, and then run the survey again after what we traditionally call in IT the go live, and just see where it's at. And you know, this backs up what Suresh is saying. If you ask the people, you will know. And we have to remember too that when we flick that go live switch on that day that we're now doing X, that's not where the change has stopped, because people have still got the momentum going, they're still taking this on board, still doing learning. So we have to be measuring the after the go live date for a period of time as well.
I absolutely agree with what Simone said. Just one of the things I often say to people is that project management installs a change, organisational change management implements the change. So project goes live, people will revert back to their old ways of working unless organisational change management keeps reinforcing that change and ensures that it gets implemented.
Exactly. Making the new normal is what I call it.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was just about to say something like that.
So just while we're coming into our last few minutes of this hangout, what are people's top tips for organisational change management? Have you got any little nuggets of wisdom that you can share with people based on your experience?
Based on my experience, I would just say don't fall into the trap of believing organisational change management is just about communication. From my experience, people have made that big assumption. It's far more than that. You need to analyse your stakeholders. People have referred to. You need to identify your sponsors and build a coalition of sponsors. They will need coaching and mentoring to be able to transition their people. You need resistance management plans. You need reinforcement plans. It's not just communication.
So in my opinion, it's all about people as part of making sure that understanding the whole dynamics of the people itself. That means the emotions, the people resistance to change, people want to people are really standing out, whether they'll hold on their jobs and stuff like that. So it's important to spend time adequately to make them go through that kind of phase of emotional curve, because that's very important from a perspective of making sure that you understand their natural process and then facilitate them to become buy-in towards the whole organization change management. It's all about people.
And my tip, just to follow up on what Suresh said then, talking about emotions, I'm very big on emotional intelligence and the various tools and techniques you can use with that. There's some wonderful short courses out there you can do on leadership with emotional intelligence. There are lots of tools and techniques around things like what we call value cards, which really help get to the what the person is valuing, how they're feeling about certain aspects, etc. And those are the things that they carry with them. We don't leave our emotions at the door when we come to work. That's that's a myth. So emotional intelligence, and read Karen's book.
And all I want to add is that there is no such thing as starting it too soon or too early. I think it has to be from the very, very beginning or even before of any project to make sure that people are aware and involved from, the right people. You might not get, straight away all the right people involved from the very, very beginning, but there is no such thing that we started too early. So it has to be started like yesterday.
Thank you. Dave, any tips from you?
Yes, my last tip really is just to explain that a lot of people define themselves by the job that they do and how they feel about it. And as everyone has previously said about people being the most important thing, when you change somebody's job or when you change the way that they do their job, it does have an impact on them emotionally. They will feel challenged and they will feel that their own identity is threatened. And so it's very, very, very important to make sure that you pay enough attention to helping them make that change and understand why that change is necessary. And it may be that the people who you're trying to change aren't up for the future state that you're trying to create. So you really have to be sensitive to their needs as well, and to help them understand, that there is not a forced outcome on them, and if it's wrong for them and they don't feel comfortable going to where you want to go, then there are other alternatives that you have to consider. So just don't assume that you can change people. Sometimes you can't. So you have to be sensitive to the fact that you might need to provide them with other alternatives.
Wise words. Thank you very much. And Randy, any last tips from you?
Yeah, just quickly, again, make this a critical part of your project implementation plan. It runs all the way through the project from start to end. And don't underestimate the effort that it takes to really make this thing work.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you tonight. I think that's been a really educational conversation, and I hope the people who've been watching have found it useful. We will be having our next ITSM Crowd in March, and the topic hasn't been chosen yet, so if you've got any suggestions, again, pop them on Twitter with the hashtag ITSM Crowd and we'll pick them up. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.